I grew up loving Peter Rabbit. Now you might think, well, of course you did. Your name's Peter. Of course you're going to love Peter Rabbit. Not necessarily, but I did have a Peter Rabbit piggy bank, and I think I had a stuffed Peter Rabbit. I remember reading these little books that you could get at the BP station with a full story in it with my mother, and it came in a little collection BP set. I remember watching the Beatrix Potter show on TV. I can't remember if it was basically the storybook animated, so very cheap animation, or if it was an actual animated show that they, took images and designs from the story and actually just animated their own version. But whatever the case, I remember that show. I loved it. I had every single episode recorded on VHS. So here I am in my 30s, remembering my childhood with Peter Rabbit, and I decided I'm going to go see Peter Rabbit 2, The Runaway. Now, right off the bat, I do kind of feel weird saying this, but I definitely think the first one was better than this one, because it took that original material, changed it up, but kept what we knew and loved, and added stuff to it. It had the right meld of the familiar with new. This one, on the other hand, was still good, but it had a lot more issues, I thought, than that first one. So here is my unedited review of Peter Rabbit 2, The Runaway. First off, we start with the voice cast. Most of them, I think, are back, except for some of the main rabbits. Now, we still do have Margot Robbie and James Corbin are back, but I don't know how much of the rest of the cast, when it comes to the voices, are back. You can't really tell the difference, but I definitely feel like overall, the characters don't really grow much. I mean, Peter does, because he starts off as everybody thinks he's the bad guy, so he becomes the bad guy, and then he learns, an obvious lesson by the end of it. So he does have that growth. There is a little bit of growth for the other rabbits, but this is Peter's movie. And the story is charming. Yes, it's predictable, but it's a family-friendly film. You get exactly what you're expecting. You get cute rabbits. You get a story about family, about animals in clothing, talking, doing funny things. And by the end, everything is fixed and all is right with the world. Now, this movie, for about 2/3 of it, is pretty good. Yes, it's predictable, but you're not going to Peter Rabbit expecting something monumental, Oscar-worthy. You get what you expect. You get, like I said, family-friendly, lesson, charming characters, and CG animals that you actually surprisingly care about. You don't know how you can feel about animals until you see them as CG talking creatures. And like I said, the story is simple. You expect what's going to happen. And there is some fourth wall breaking, in the sense that they don't directly talk to the camera, but they give a lot of hints. Like, oh, I've got this many stories planned, which is how many she wrote. I don't want this to ever become a big blockbuster, kind of like the movie. And it's okay to a certain degree, but it's at the end that it just goes too far for me. I held my head and I was shaking it because I'm like, okay, this went way too far. They just talk about something and I'm like, really? You didn't need to do a full scene about this one topic. I would have cut it earlier and stopped doing these fourth wall type breaks. And like I said, 2/3 of the movie is fun, it's entertaining, it's charming, it's lovable. I laughed, I had a smile on my face. But then we get towards the end where everything climaxes. And I'm just like, really? This is where you're going? I know why you're doing it, because of how you wrote earlier in the story. It's foreshadowing stuff. But I'm like, this just feels really, really ridiculous, even for a Peter Rabbit film. The other thing that I wasn't too sure about with this movie was the trailers lead you to believe that it's mostly going to be Peter out on his own adventure. But that's not the case. The rest of the gang is around for a lot of it. And while, yes, that's definitely good that it's not just Peter and you got the whole ensemble, I feel like the trailers led you to believe felt that this was going to be an exploration for Peter. And yes, you do get that. I just feel like you don't get as much of that as you might think you would. So, without giving anything away, the story is very predictable. Early on, you know what's going to happen. You know, oh, she's going to feel this way. He's going to feel this way. Something like this is going to happen. There might be one or two surprises if you don't really think about it. But if you manage to put all that aside, the movie itself is charming. It's fun. It's entertaining. There's some humorous moments. And overall, the story works pretty well. It flows. There's nothing that I can really say, okay, that doesn't make sense, or that's a nitpick. It's just a good movie to go and take the kids to, or take the family as a whole. Or if you're somebody like me and you grew up with Peter Rabbit, you might just like to see it to see what they do. But I definitely think the first movie is a lot better than this one. Don't know why they did a second one, as they state somewhere in the movie. So I would say just watch the first one. If you love Peter Rabbit, if it's a childhood memory, maybe watch this one, but you don't need to. Just focus on that first one. So I would give this one a ranking of civilian. Because it's right down that middle where it's like, if you want to see it, see it. I wouldn't say you need to go to the theater to. If it has nostalgic purpose for you or memories for you, then sure. You have a young kid who's just getting into Peter Rabbit, sure, take them. You're not going to lose any sleep by watching it. You're not going to be disappointed that you saw it. You're not going to be angry that you saw it. You're not going to be overjoyed that you saw it. You're going to be right down that middle. But what about you? What's your relationship with the whole Peter Rabbit character? Did you love these stories growing up too? Are they part of your childhood? Did you see that first movie? Do you want to see this one? What are your thoughts about it? For being 30, am I crazy for going to see this movie? That might be one you don't want to answer. But don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And until my next review, read what you love, enjoy what you love, and let's all work for a better fandom. I'll see you next time.